Dan. We're clapping for the Castin clan. It is my sincere pleasure to introduce Dan Castin today with his dissertation work. His dissertation work, obviously a phenomenological study about an area very near and dear to me, transformative time in nature. Today, we are honored to have his parents here. Here they are, stand up. And Sherry and Mallory are coming tomorrow, his wife and his daughter, so they'll be here at his graduation and be able to watch the recording. Also with us in the audience is Dr. Mary Ann Norton, part of Dan's committee, right here. Mary Ann is teacher extraordinaire, committee member extraordinaire, and she also works at Ferrum College. Also on Dan's committee is Dr. Eric Breimer. He is a senior lecturer at Queensland University Technology, and he will either be on board or watch the recording. And since he's pretty much almost 24 hours ahead or behind, whatever they are in Australia. 17, yeah, well, what's 5 or 7 hours? And his final committee member, the external reader, is Renee Kessler. She happens to be with students in Nepal right now, and she works at Longwood College. Dan's journey has been totally smooth. He never changed his question. No.
Good one. Yep.
Dan's journey has been very typical. Wondering about question, wondering about methods. He has done just a wonderful job of digging into his research and has managed to publish at least one paper during this time, 2 now, and doing quite a bit of conference presentations. So that's all good. But to make sure he has all his time, without further ado, I just want to let you know it's been an absolute pleasure to work with Dan, and here he is to tell you about his research.
Thank you. Okay, first I got to adjust my volume on my voice to match the sensitivity of the microphone. Is that better? Right, I'll find the right spot. Okay, so my experience through my dissertation has been amazing. It started many years ago, actually, but it culminated here at Prescott, and this has been such a great crucible for me to go through this in an in-depth way. So let me tell you a little bit about me. As Denise said, I teach at Ferrum College in instruction and recreation leadership. My real focus is adventure education, outdoor education, basically anything that I can do to get people outside. And in particular, this is something that has emerged for me, especially here, is that I want them to get outside and play. I don't want them to go outside and have these really super intense experiences that overwhelm them and they get scared of it. I don't want them to go out and have negative, I want them to have positive experiences. And what I've found through reading the literature around play theory is that that's exactly what we're doing when we're in play. We are fully there and present, and that has been just such a wonderful discovery out of this process. So, okay. So I want to give some acknowledgments here. Sorry. We have my committee members, obviously. Eric, hi, if you're there. Hopefully you will be. Okay. And Renee Kessler, like I said, Denise said she's in Nepal right now. Darn it, she couldn't pull herself away from trekking in the Khumbu region to come here. I don't know why. So, okay. I'd also like to thank my mom and dad. They've been a big inspiration throughout my life, very supportive, and in many ways have encouraged me consistently and regularly to seek education. Seek education is the most, okay. And just the value they instilled that really early on in my life. Okay. My brother Dave, I got to recognize him because he was my personal IT guy. Whenever I would freak out, my computer wasn't working, he was the guy that I could call. And he was also a great moral support in the middle of the night when I was like, oh my God, I don't know, and I'm crying, and I want to give up, and he's like, all of a sudden, right there for me. And obviously my wife and my daughter, Sherry and Mallory, they will be here tomorrow. You'll get to see their wonderful faces and so forth tomorrow, and they are a huge inspiration in my life. So, okay. Now, I got to start with this picture right here. When I was in Boy Scouts, I was 12, 13 years old, on a really early experience backpacking, I had this really incredible experience with a bunch of these little chickadees. I hiked up to the top of this ridge. I was tired and fatigued, and I wanted to sit down. I was alone, and I sat down on this rock, and almost instantaneously, these birds came in several of them within arm's reach of me. And I felt this really intense experience that ultimately ended up leading me into my studies in biology and ecology, and ultimately into recreation leadership, and now to here. So I also have to thank these little birds for connecting me so deeply with the natural world. So all of this has culminated in this idea of what is happening in the moment. What causes people to go through an experience that causes them to realign their thinking about the world? Okay, it's a really difficult question to get to because it's really, it's hard to get your hands around it. It's hard to get your head around it, hard to get your heart around it. And yet we all know it's there. We all experience it in some way in different ways. Well, I'm using that all-inclusive word, the royal all. But I really believe that it does happen for most people at some point in their life. They wake up one day or they have the potential to have that experience at some point. Okay, so I looked at this. These are some of the background questions to help me get to that bigger question. Okay, so I'm looking at what happens during the experience that facilitates this perception change. Okay, and then another one would be what are the features of the place and what's going on for the person and how is that all mingling together? And then finally, what potential is there to influence that experience in a way that we can foster these experiences and make people more aware that they're happening? Because one of the things that I discovered in my lit review, which focused on this idea of nature, was one of the key components, is there is this very large, and y'all, I'm preaching to the choir here, I know, but there's this disconnection that many people feel. I see it with my students at Ferrum, where I take them on a hike, and they tell me, and I actually had students tell me this one time, I'm allergic to green. I'm allergic to being outside. And it's just like, that is to me a very, very sad state, where you don't even feel comfortable in the world, in the natural world in particular. Okay? So I did a lot of reading about what does nature really even mean, and spent a lot of time thinking about that. And that led me to thinking about this idea that we have this affinity for nature. We have this affinity for nature. This is expressed through biophilia, through eco-psychology, through attention restoration theory. So these are evidence all over the place from many years of literature that has laid this out. And many of y'all, as students here, have been expressing these same things and finding these other sources that I would love to hear about, actually. Okay? So it's this basic reaction to in connection with living things. We like to have living things around us. We like it. We like to have our pets. My mom and dad have their dog out in the camper. It does have a generator running with the air conditioner, so the dog's not going to die, right? But there's a reason that they chose to drive from Roanoke, Virginia, they're heading all the way over to the West Coast with their dog. That's the affinity for nature, okay? We want to have living beings around us. And then the other big piece was this idea of deep play. The play literature talks about, look at this. Yeah, I noticed that, yeah. Thanks, Nikki. We've had this internal joke that she stands and does this all the time when she presents, and now I'm doing it, thanks. Yeah, so, at any rate. All right, so play usually is considered as a child activity, right? But yet we have the potential to play throughout our lifetime, okay? It is an important part of who we are as creatures on this earth. It's how we interact with the world. And that's the information, or that's what I was informed about through reading about deep play. Diane Ackerman's work is incredible on this, absolutely incredible. She's done a wonderful job of laying all this down. She has a quote in there, and I'm going to paraphrase it because I don't have it right here in my head. But she says that play, at its fundamental level, is a sacred act. Okay? That's a paraphrase, I know, but that's really what it's about. How do we get people to engage with the natural world in a playful way. Play opens us up, and this is actually what's resulted in my research, which I'm going to get to that now. Okay? Oh, one other thing, sorry. Forgot this. This is the value of slides right here. Okay? So the other thing that's really important to recognize is that we also have this potential to have a transformative experience. Okay? And I'm going to get into what that means in a little bit. But essentially, I define transformation, or the transformational experience, as gaining insight into the way you look at the world. And that motivates a change. That insight changes how you see the world. Okay? That's what happened to me sitting there with those chickadees talking to me. I saw my reflection in their eyes, literally and figuratively. That was a playful state for me to incorporate them into me for at least that little bit of time, for at least that moment. It connected me in a way that caused me to go, maybe I don't want to ride motorcycles as much anymore. Maybe I want to get into bird watching. Maybe I want to do this. Maybe I want to do this. So my behaviors changed at 12 years old, even though my culture was saying, no, we need to go do this. And I'm going, no, I'm going to go do this. Okay? Okay. So I used interpretive phenomenological analysis. Smith, Flowers, and Larkin's book was very, very informative for me. This is exactly the title of the book if you want it. Okay? Interpretive phenomenology. It's a very effective, really well done, very laid out process. However, phenomenology is not limited to one model. So I changed it and modified it to fit what I thought was happening and to get a better understanding of what's happening with these experiences. Okay? Okay. So that process, a little bit more about the phenomenological process in general, is that you do these, or I did 15 interviews with people who had self-identified that they had had some experience with nature that changed them. Okay, so last summer I spent traveling with my family, and we went up to Acadia up in Maine, and while we're traveling, I'm talking to people. Hey, how you doing? Going around the campfire, the campground. What's going on for you? Why are you camping? And out of that dialogue, I would find these people that had said, yeah, I really had something like that happen to me. And then I say, hey, would you be interested in participating in the study? And most of them, with the exception of one person, okay, the 16 people that I asked, there was one person that said no. And it was because she didn't feel ready to share that experience. It was too personal to her. Beyond that, everybody else that I asked about this, they were just like, let's do it. I want to share this. And the other thing that I found was that I would say talk about one experience, and then in that story, they would start talking about, well, there was this other time, there was this other time. And so the stories that I ended up finding 25 different stories out of the 15 people. And some of the stories were like from when they were like 5, all the way up to teenagers, all the way up to college level. And I didn't have anybody that were like in the adult, technically, whatever, over 30, whatever. But those experiences had meaning to them. Okay, they were very, very significant for them, and they influenced where they ended up taking their life. Okay, so a couple of big overarching findings that I had. One was that there was recognition that something meaningful had occurred for them. Okay, there was an acknowledgement of the value of the experience. Okay, and the reason I stress that is because I think that there's a lot of people that have these experiences, but they don't know what to do with them. And then as a result of that, they don't apply meaning to them, and it doesn't facilitate transformation. Okay, so that's going to come back up later. Okay, one of the very not surprising actually, but it was intriguing in that 100% of them, every one of them, had a shift towards a nature-oriented lifestyle. Okay, in several cases, I had one gentleman. He was he was a college student, business, accounting, that kind of thing was his major. Went on a week-long backpacking trip in a national park where he was surrounded by potential grizzly bears and all kinds of stuff. Came back and changed his major to natural resource management, and now works for up in Washington State doing water quality management. So that's a pretty significant shift to have happen over a 1-week period. Okay, so let me give you a couple of examples of this. These are a couple of quotes. I'll let you read these while I get a drink of water. Find my spot too. Okay. So, as you can see, in some cases, it was a subtle shift. I shifted from pre-professional sciences over to biology. Okay? So the shift was like, instead of going into the medical field, I want to go and be in the vet field. I need biology now. Okay? And it reinforced for this young lady, this was Adrienne, she was 20 years old at the time, her experience was on horseback riding. She went out and had been doing barrel riding and training for a competition that's coming up. She and her horse had this really kind of standard practice. After they rode horses, they were training, and then would go for a casual ride where the horse kind of led the way, and she just kind of helped the horse make sure that she didn't get hurt herself. Right? She had this really incredible experience where these deer, the horse told her that the deer was there because the way and the connection that she had with the horse told her that this had happened, that these deer were right there beside of her. And then out of that, she expanded her horizon and changed. Okay? So in Joanna's case, she shifted from being an environmental science major, which you would think, well, that's already a nature-oriented lifestyle, to being a rec leadership and outdoor education major because of this part right here. Should be able to enjoy experiences like that. She wanted to get into a position where she could help other people have what she had. Okay? And then this is Jeff, the gentleman I was just talking about. He talks about this very specifically, that experiencing Glacier National Park changed his life. And every one of them, all 15 of the participants, were able to link where they are now in their life back through to one or two or a handful of these types of experiences. And they are now seeking these similar experiences as part of their daily routine and so forth. Okay? Okay. So, back to this. We're gonna talk a little bit more about the moment and these contributing factors, and that will lead us into kind of where the research is going to go on overall. This is what I think is going on. Okay? When someone, the findings really indicated that there were kind of three big things that were occurring. Okay? You had over here the antecedents. These are the things that people bring to the experience. This is our baggage. Okay? It can be based on our education. It can be based on our moral upbringing, whether we're in a church or not. It really doesn't matter. That's what influences our mindset going into the experience. It frames how we live and go through an experience. Okay? And then on the other end, we have this, what I've termed the substantiation and integration process. And that includes, what it is that helps the person make the meaning that then they take and go, okay, this is important enough that I want to follow this path. How do I get on that path and how do I move forward? And I did not focus specifically on the details of these, but they definitely emerged as really, really important factors. Okay? In some cases, the antecedents being, I read a whole bunch on mysticism and mystical experiences with nature. And it's just, the literature is so rich about the value of being connected with the natural world as part of a religious practice. That's an antecedent, in that it's framing how you engage with the experience itself. Okay? So my focus was really on this Venn diagram bubble thing that's going on in the middle. Okay? Now, I want you to understand that I visualize this as not static. This is a very, very dynamic thing. And this is future research I'm hoping will help me to understand better the dynamics of what's really going on and intensity levels and so forth. But that wasn't the purpose of this study. It was really to help me to identify what was going on in these. Okay? So we're going to go through each one of them a little bit. So engagement, this is how in phenomenology you end up doing what's called a composite description. And the way you get to that is that you read all these things. I had 15 people's worth of interviews, hundreds of pages of documents, and I go through each one of them, and I find the themes that are emerging in those. And then I do across the board, and I look at the themes that go across all 15. And then I look for the commonalities and come up with that definition. Okay? So this is fragments, in a lot of cases, literal fragments from their description. Their words are expressed in this. That's the intent of phenomenology. It's not me saying this is what I mean by engagement. This is what they said was engagement. Okay? So, here's an example. Right? This is Will. Let me give you a little background about Will. I gotta move this. This is bugging me. How's that? Is that better? Better? Okay, thank you. I was like, ooh, I can't do that. Okay, so Will, he's 22 years old when I interviewed him. This experience that he's describing was when he was 5 or 6 years old with his dad on a creek in the middle of Richmond, Virginia, which is a pretty good sized metropolitan area. Okay? So here he is in what you would think would be a completely urban environment, and yet this is the experience that he is having. So let me read it out for you as you read along. I'll see if I can get into his character, by the way. Okay. One other thing about Will, he's an awesome fiddle player and mandolin. Oh, beautiful. Okay, all right. I feel that it definitely was a feeling of comfort, because considering myself such a small being in this environment, it just kind of made me feel like I belonged more, like I just kind of fit in. Like I was a little creature living there, and it just made me feel kind of assimilate and relate deeply to the area. And I was very comfortable there, and I felt very confident in my abilities to move around. It was like very much like I was a creature there, and I'm sure in my mind I kind of acted upon that feeling. You know, definitely how I was jumping across the rocks and kind of working my way through branches. You know, I kind of slithering in a sense through the landscape there. It was definitely, I kind of felt like it was a creature there, a small creature just kind of creatures dwelling there. That's just beautiful to me. Here he is, 6 years old, making that level of engagement with his environment, where he sees himself as a creature in that environment, as opposed to this visitor to the environment. Okay? Another example. This is Katie. She's a wonderful, wonderful young lady. Right? Let me give you a little background on her. When she was in high school, she went on a trip to Thailand as a part of a study abroad program focused on conservation and so forth. This is a very brief capture. I'm going to read a little bit more about the full experience, but basically, she spent a week camping by elephant, traveling through the rainforest, traveling around and camping and engaging with this elephant on a very personal level. Right? So she's, out of that experience, I want to be there. I want to stay there. Let me tell you a little bit more about what happened to get her to this place. I asked her specifically to expand on what this statement meant. She says, to trust probably, and to know she, her elephant, felt that way about me. She trusted me and I trusted her. But there was no way for us to communicate that to each other. I can give you an example. When this camping trip started out, my mahout, which is a Thai elephant trainer, or handler rather, was telling me we were coming up to a cow pasture, and that pin cod, my elephant, is scared of cows. Big animal, little animal, big one scared of little one. Okay. We get to the cows, and she's okay, walking past them, a little bit slower, not as much pep in her step. I don't know what happened, if a cow moved or what, but the next thing I know, we were taking off to the side of the mountain to my left. Cow pastures, flat, nothing, road, and mountain. I hung on for dear life, squeezing my legs together, riding like a horse, and held up onto her ears and ducking down low. I was ducking trees. Trees were whizzing by me, and she was taking out trees. Slap, slap. We must have gone about a mile and down the other side and finally stopped. I wasn't mad or scared, probably when she was running, and I was surprised at her speed. I felt bad for her. He, the mahout, was yelling at her, "What are you doing?" She was scared and shaken up. We walked back down, and he asked me if I was okay. I don't really remember getting back down to the trail. I guess I was in shock, but the other part I remember vividly. We must have skirted and got back down on the trail. I wasn't afraid. My friends and other people on the trip asked, "Are you okay? Are you gonna get back on her?" Yeah. It wasn't a question in my mind. For whatever reason, I liked her more. I respected her, and I knew she was sensitive. I needed to be careful and respectful of that. Okay? Beautiful. Okay, so that's what they said about engagement. Okay? Another theme that emerged was this idea of immersion. Now, what is the difference between engagement and immersion? Well, this is the difference according to this, okay? Feeling fully integrated and belonging with one's surroundings. It's kind of very similar to what you think would be immersion or engagement, right? Also feeling an acute sense of scale, and this was very, very interesting. They felt not big, not small, but appropriate to the environment. They felt proper in relationship to the environment around them, okay? It may be feeling nested or at home, or, this was an interesting finding right here in and of itself, it could also be feeling vulnerable and out of control, okay? Either way, there was a sense of being cared for in some way, and the peace and wonder was right there, even though they were living right on the edge in some cases, but also feeling very nested in others. So, okay, a couple of examples. This is Laura. She was 17. Ooh, I'm going to move this for you. Sorry. Here, is that better? Okay. Okay, much better, at least for me. Does that work for y'all? Okay, all right. So Laura, she went on a trip I'm sorry, not a trip, but she went on a program when she was in high school, 17 years old. And it was a mushroom hunting trip as an extra credit for one of her classes. Wasn't going there to have any kind of experience. It was a reluctant participant person who was talking about that. She kind of was saying, I really didn't want to go, but I had to for extra credit, da, da, da. While she was there, this is what happened to her, okay? She's mushroom hunting, and she says, I sort of that feeling of not self-consciousness, which was unusual feeling for high school. It was like I was rolling and looking and completely absorbed in what I was doing, okay? Another one here. By the way, Laura is now a master naturalist with the Virginia Department of Game and Land and Fisheries, and guess what she teaches about? Mushrooms. Yeah. Okay. She's also she refers to herself as a professional mom because she's been a stay-at-home mom most of her adult life, and yet this is a really important part of her life she's a professional within that organization now. Okay. So this is Max. He's 20 years old at the time, and he was on a trip in Costa Rica as part of a study abroad program at FARM. And he's floating on a river in Costa Rica. Now, the day before this had happened, he had a really, really very intense experience at a sacred waterfall and been blessed by a shaman. So those antecedents were very well seated in his head. He was framed and ready for this to happen. So here he is, laying on this river, floating down the river, and this is what he says. He says, it was nothing else but me and this river and that sky and those trees. This is the world at that time, and nothing else mattered. That's a sense of immersion. Okay? Okay. I think I got one more here. Yeah, okay. So this is where that other end of that spectrum comes in, about that feeling really, really on the edge. Right? This is Jeff. This was the gentleman I was talking about with the glacier, went and backpacking in the bear country and so forth. This was his experience. Let me see if I can find it here. Okay. Well, we felt that we could be in danger because between cougars, they were present, as well as black bears and grizzly bears. So just hiking on foot with food in that environment didn't make us feel safe. It was somewhat of an adrenaline rush, although low risk. We weren't collaring them. We weren't trying to trap them and collar them, right? No, we just had to be prepared in case something happened. We felt at risk, like we were leaving ourselves open for something to happen that could be dangerous or scary. That was exciting and neat and meant a lot to us, which brought us closer together. We shared this risk together, and we were both stepping out of our comfort zone. That is what I meant by being vulnerable. We were open to the challenge and the risk, although ultimately nothing happened. They were still there. Right? They were still immersed. Okay, openness. Got 3 minutes. Awesome. Okay. Okay, this sense of openness. Right? Openness is this feeling of complete embodied acceptance of the situation and the possible outcomes. Very similar to what Jeff was expressing in the previous quote. Right? He's just open to it. I want to let this happen, see where we go instead of me trying to stop and control and avoid or whatever. Okay? It's being presently aware of the significance of the moment is another factor that came out. Right? A couple of examples. Right? This is Matt, 39-year-old male. Where's Linky, her husband? Yeah, this is her husband. He was kind enough to be interviewed. I know that's I or B incorrect, but whatever. Okay. Okay. I just revealed one of my study participants, I'm sorry. But they did all sign the form saying I could use their names. So I'm good. Okay, so Matt, 39 years old, okay. Here he is talking about a trip when he was backpacking about 17, 18 years old, okay. His motivation, I gotta pull it up here, okay, so I don't turn around. My motivation is to take it one step at a time and soak in each step. The minute I step on the trail, I feel my senses heightened, like I'm in the zone. There are these little tiny things. It's really a mind shift, and I think it is a mind shift towards opening to letting what is happening come to you. All right? So it is a very good description of what it means to be open. The other piece to this is where the vulnerability comes back in as well. I think vulnerability it could be a theme. If I could go back, and I will go back and look for that and see if that emerges more frequently in these other areas. It may end up being its own theme. I'm not sure yet. Okay, so here's another example of openness. Okay, this is Chris. He at the time was in his 20s and running a lot in the Chicago Parks districts. They have these what's called the Emerald. What do they call this? Emerald forests, the Emerald rings, right? And he says it was being stunned by the beauty. It was a doe. And I was just stunned by the beauty of it, the majesty of this animal, and I didn't want it to run away, so I wanted to transmit a message that I'm not going to hurt you. I just want to see you and get to know you in some way. I just remember consciously trying to put down my defenses and being really, really open, to open up my breathing to a deeper level, and I could almost feel it. I felt like I don't want to say out of body, but that was an experience of deep connectedness and presence that is hard to replicate. It is one that I remember it's indelible. It was a deer, or if it's a deer or a crow or whatever else, they're all components of the same thing, the big energy. So by being open to interacting with this one, he had this epiphany, and it opened him up. Now he teaches at Ferrum, actually, in the recreation leadership, and he teaches about interpretation. Who was asking me about interpretation last night? He is an amazing man, and this is where he started. Before that, he was selling beepers. Not kidding. That's what he was doing. And then out of this experience, plus a few others, he began to develop the capacity or the desire to go and try to figure out how to make a living with this. Okay? Okay, one last one. Well, that's shifting over when we drink. Okay. Okay. This sense of attunement. This connects very directly with some research in the play theory stuff that I was reading about. Edith Cobb, who is an amazing educator from the, oh man, I knew I was going to mess that up, 1970s is when she was doing most of her work, okay? She talks about children being in a state of intuitive attunement while they're in this very particular age range of about 6 years up to about 12 years old, as they emerge from their biological self and emerge into and grow into their social self. And there's this place that they are both a social creature and a biological creature, and they know it. And they experience it directly, and they seek it, and they go out and they want to do it. Okay? So, sense of connection and harmony. There's also a focus on maintaining the relationship. And that was the thing that was really key to me about the attunement piece, is it is an active participation in maintaining that relationship as opposed to letting it pass. Okay? And really wanting to keep it going, which is one of the defining factors of being in a state of play. There's the perpetuation of the experience. Okay? A couple of examples and then we'll be wrapping up. I got one more after this, sorry. I woke to the sound of something very large scratching my tree. Oh, this is Rachel. Oh, great young lady. I know I'm running a long time, I'm going to deal with it. Okay, so Rachel, she's 21 now, but at 15 years old, she was hunting with her family on this farm right outside of Roanoke, and she was sitting on her tree stand and had fallen asleep because it was early in the morning. She woke up to this. Okay? I woke to the sound of something very large scratching my tree, very large. I peeked over my little tree stand, and there was a huge bear chilling and 2 cubs. I was shivering to begin with, and I was looking down at a very large animal, and she was looking up, and her face kind of changed because she had an aggressive look to begin with. I don't know if she thought I was a child because I'm little or if I'm not a threat, but she changed. Like, you know how wolves have a playful looks sometimes, and their eyes change and their eyes light up a little bit? She did that and then moved away to play with her cubs, but made a flitting last look where I've seen all the kinds of spelling errors, I'm sorry about that. Flitting last look at me where she gave me a slight growl, but it wasn't aggressive growl. It was more like a warning, and then she started moving away with her cubs. Okay? Please don't eat me. That's what she said. So she's making this, she's actively trying to tell this animal, kind of like what we were talking about in the openness and the other factors. Okay? But the interesting thing about this particular story is that she and her family have been hunting on that farm for many years since that. So over the last 7 years, she's seen the cubs grow up. All right, her and her family have chosen not to kill the deer, and instead, whenever they kill the bear. So instead, what they do is when they kill a deer, they gut it there and leave it at the base of their cave where the bears live. They know where the bears live. They walk up to the cave and give it to them and walk away. And literally, that's the kind of relationship that is developed with this. So it is a multi-generational, dad, brothers, younger, her kid that's now this tall, is going out there and seeing and interacting with these bears, seeing multiple levels of, it's just a really, really interesting relationship that she's developed. I could probably do a study just on that one thing, to be completely honest. Okay, so, all right, one more. Okay, this is Sue. She's 54 years old, man, female. Okay, you want me to keep moving?
You don't need to.
Okay, I don't need to? Okay, sure. All right, well, anyway, Sue, she's 54. All right, I'm going to do it anyway. She was recalling this experience when she was 5 years old with her and her mom crawling across a field to get close to a little deer, little baby doe. Okay, and she said we were crawling really slow. So there's this effort to maintain the relationship. Okay, that is a key part of this particular theme. So okay, one last one. There's only one quote in there. Right. So this idea of novelty is another theme that emerged. Okay, but this actually, Denise, this was changed a little bit from when we talked the other day, right? It's not about it being completely and utterly different than your everyday experience. It's actually more about seeing the uniqueness within the mundane and the ordinary, okay? So it's not about going out and doing that thrill-seeking and trying to go to that next higher level of novelty. It's really about being aware of the novelty that's existing right now, okay? So one quick quote for that one. This was Matt, again, 39. Yep, okay. This was Matt, by the way. He was telling a story about when he was about 6 years old going to Boulder, Colorado with his grandparents for the first time. Anybody sensing a theme with the mentors and stuff like that? I don't know. Anyway, he says it was completely different than anything I'd ever seen. Okay? So being that high up above tree line was something I'd never experienced before. That time of year, there were still patches of snow. Another thing that adds to the mystery, the word mystery came up a lot in this study. Okay, so that led me to think about novelty. So I'll let y'all finish reading that one. Okay, one last thing, and then I'm done. Again, these things are in constant motion. That's the way I see them, at least. They're not static. They're dynamic. They're moving. They're fluctuating. And it may be that for one person, novelty is the kind of the gateway for them, or the threshold to get into these other parts of the experience that start to emerge once they get into it a little bit, once they allow themselves to be exposed to it. For other people, it may be that they have this ability to be really attuned to the things that are around them, and that might be their threshold to get into the experience. Okay, so I haven't figured out if there's a 1, 2, 3, 4, blah, 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 and I don't think it's really relevant. I don't think it's important. I think what's more important is that we create these potentials for people to have these kinds of experience and then learn more about how do people really make meaning of these experiences. Okay, and what are really the antecedents that really can influence these experiences, right? Which all informs my future research. These are things that I want to go through. I want to pick apart this thing and rip it apart and look at it differently. So, okay, I know I'm right at my time now, so Got
Thank
some
you, Dan.
questions?
We have time for one question.
One more. Come on, go one more. Go on. Good. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Dan, for the work that you're doing in the world. On deep play, from my experiences as a Zimbabwean child, going out into the wild to pick wild fruit, and I'll talk about majanje, my favorite. I'm wondering how you're seeing this happening within the US context, within this country. How are people relating to nature from that perspective?
I think, now I'm going to get up on my soapbox. I think that we have some serious issues with connecting not just our children, but people in general with nature. There's an aversion that I feel from my students, that I sense from other people, and that's a huge problem. Because without that connection, as many of you have already talked about in your dissertation proposals or your dissertation presentations today, without that connection, they don't care. Why would we care about something we don't? If there's not a connection, what do I care? It's not mine, I don't care. So when we do this, when we create these experiences and help people understand their deeper connection to nature, it really can change some things. And it's a huge issue. I think it's one of the, we can't get to sustainability until we have the connection, and we can't have the connection because we have all these distractions in our lives and things like that. So thank you for the question. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much. Somebody from the committee, what's next?
Well, we have lunch coming in a few minutes, and Melanie is going to talk to us a little bit and spend a bit of time with us during lunch.